Now I'm sure you guys heard that Bakugo is still alive, and that is a very important part to the chapter itself, but I'm more so interested in what's happening with All For One. Specifically his usage of Erie's rewind quirk, which I think will play a very important part in the upcoming chapters. Now the chapter started off by giving us some more information on how All For One acquired this quirk, and of course we're learning all this from a flashback of Dr. Ujiko. So it says here that Shigaraki seized the quirk-destroying drug which was secretly manufactured by the 8 precepts of death. As soon as he gave some to me, I immediately tried to reproduce it. The original came from a person's quirk. It reverses casualty just like you said. Throughout the process of creation, I focused on its original effect rather than the quirk-destroying bullet. I must admit to the validity of the doomsday theory. You can only use this once. Once you are freed, this will surely help you to achieve your dream, which we'll get into later on in the chapter. Now to get a full idea of what I'm trying to say here, All For One also said that this rewind, now that I've used it, I'll eventually disappear and die. Now the reason why I found this interesting is that this could mean one of two things, or it could mean both, to be honest. Now this could mean that his body will continue to get younger and younger until he turns into a baby, then a sperm cell, and then he disappears. So I guess that's what he means by his body will eventually disappear and die, because the quirk is still active, so apparently he can't deactivate the quirk once he activates it, and that's the downside to using this trump card. Now the interesting thing about this for me is that before all of that happens, shouldn't he lose the rewind quirk? Because basically what the quirk does is rewind your body, your genetic makeup, to an earlier state, and we know that the quirks themselves, they have a quirk factor which is tied into the DNA of the person itself. So if he reverts his cells back to a point before he had the rewind quirk, which is before he came back from Tartarus, then he shouldn't have the rewind quirk at that point, so the effects of the rewind quirk shouldn't be affecting his body anymore, right? So this seems to be somewhat of a paradox in some sense, because there's no way he can revert his body to his original form, because the quirk should have stopped working before he got to his younger state. The only way this quirk should have worked is by reverting his body back to before he got the quirk initially, which was when he came back from Tartarus as shown in this chapter. So how is he reverting back to way before he even went into Tartarus, back to when he was in his prime based on his genetic makeup, based on his outward appearances right now? How is he able to get back to that state when at that point in time he didn't have the quirk? If you get what I mean, right? It's reverting his body back to a point where the quirk was not in his body. So how can the quirk still be active and doing damage to his body by reverting him back to a point where he no longer exists? The only way this should work is if someone does this to you from outside, like it's an outside influence that's doing this to your body. This can't be you doing it to yourself, right? Because again, this would have brought him back to a point where he didn't have the quirk, so the quirk should not be working because it's not an outside influence, it's coming from himself. So it's a very weird thing there that I don't think they thought out. Now, if someone else in the comment section can explain to me, if they have a better explanation of how it makes sense, then sure, go ahead, I have no problem. But based on what I'm seeing here, it just doesn't line up. He shouldn't have been able to go back to his original state, yet alone be erased out of existence by a quirk that he's using on himself. You know, it's just kind of weird. But that's basically what's happening here based on what they explained. He's gonna get erased from existence. So we'll see how that plays out in the upcoming chapters. Now, he also says that he doesn't care that he's being erased because he's already prepared Tomura Shigaraki to carry on his will. So this is giving me like Boruto vibes with Ishiki dying and then imparting his will upon Code. But the difference here is that All For One is literally inside Shigaraki, like a copy of himself is inside Shigaraki. So while the real All For One will be dying, this copy of himself will live on. So I guess he feels as if that copy is worthy enough to carry on his will, even though the original him will die. You know, that will still be him dying. It's not like his consciousness will automatically transfer over because a copy of himself is already there. And I personally didn't see All For One as the type of guy that wants to die, you know, like is okay with dying. I think he would have wanted to like literally control Shigaraki's body and shit, but I guess in some ways he will be because a copy of himself is in Shigaraki, and I guess that's good enough for him, I suppose. But yeah, that's basically what happens here. Then we move to Hawks trying to like delay All for One because he descended from the sky, stole someone's quirk, took their clothing to cover his naked body and shit. And Hawks is trying to buy time for Endeavor to charge up his ability or to get back his strength to so that he can finish off All for One. He can't use Rewind again, that was a one and done deal. So we see Hawks trying to buy time. He basically asks him what his plan was, and All for One says that it's really simple. I was influenced by comics. The villains are feared all over the world. Why do you think that is? Then Hawks replied saying that because they do bad things, and All for One said, and what would that be? He said that in this world full of countless cultures and values, it is an action that is frowned upon by everyone. Then we see like an internal dialogue of either him saying something or someone else saying something to him or something that he's remembering, and it says that it is something that obstructs the future you envision. So I think someone is saying this to All for One, I suppose. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. In the comment section, you guys probably know more than me, to be honest. And then he says that that's why you see why I want to obstruct the future of this world. That's all I've ever wished for. Then we move on to a general having a conversation with the President of the United States of America, and the President is basically saying that according to the reports from our specialized agency for quirks, Tomura has reached a point beyond human control. In other words, no matter what happens to him, he's untouchable. And towards a monster like him, we've barred our fangs in the form of stars and stripes and those missiles. Then the general asked if the President is saying that they should ingratiate themselves to Shigaraki. Then they have a shouting match, and the President says that the developed nations have already begun scrambling to see who can gain Tomura's trust first, and they're basically saying that it's damage control and that's what they need to do to protect the nations. Which, look, I understand what they're saying. You know, if he's become untouchable, if he's become all powerful and they can't kill him, why not appease him so that he doesn't destroy the country? I think it makes sense. It's not what everyone wants to hear, but it's a very logical step. Now, there is also another logical step, everyone coming together to take out this dude, which you haven't done so far. Yes, they sent Star and Stripes and they sent missiles, but that's basically it. That's all the outside help they got. So you're telling me that's all the entire world has to offer? Yes, she was the strongest, or maybe one of the strongest, and All Might is out of there, but Deku is still there. They have all these pro heroes, they have all these heroes around the entire world, and you're telling me no one can put up proper heroes to come together and take out this dude? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I think there's a more logical step they can take, but this is a logical step. I just don't think that it's at this point as yet. And then they basically showed an image of All Might reaching out to Star and Stripes, saying that the old generation guides the new one and protects them, and then the newer one protects the newer generation. So basically it's a cycle of heroes helping heroes, which brings us into this dude, Headshot, basically giving his life to save Bakugo. Now for some reason he says that because he's able to fit himself into tiny places, this somehow means that he's able to like turn himself into a heart and an organ to like save Bakugo, which is weird. This doesn't make any logical sense. Now, if there was a established mechanic by which he would be able to do that, then this would make more sense, but based on his ability, that just doesn't seem to like work out for me so far. Now, of course, they're gonna make it make sense, and I hope they explain it. Maybe it's a hidden ability, maybe he has two quirks and he has only displayed one, which I don't think is the case, because Best Genius kinda implies that he knows what he's going to do, which means that Best Genius knows about whatever he's going to do to Bakugo, which means that it's not really a secret. Now, you could argue that Best Genius knows, but not everyone knows that he has a second quirk, but I just don't think it's the case. I think he's gonna fold himself and just become a heart because that's what he said he's going to do, which I don't know, bro. I think they need to explain this in the upcoming chapters. I have no problem per se with Bakugo coming back to life, because we saw that with Maki in JJK. Like, she died the first time off screen, well, on screen, and they kind of implied that she died. Then we see that she's alive, and then she kind of died again, and then she came back with heavenly restriction. So look, I have no problem with him coming back, but how he comes back is very important, and I think they need to like do a better job of explaining how this makes sense, which I think they might do. So let's just give them time, and I think it might make sense. Overall, I think it was a very informative chapter. It's very good. I don't have any problems with it per se, except that Bakugo thing, which I don't think makes sense, and also the rewind thing that they could like tie up Lucy and make it make sense. So I'm not too worried about that. But this Bakugo thing, I think they really need to ensure that it makes sense for everyone to just move on, you know, and calm down, because the uproar is very, very loud right now. It's very loud. So they need to do something about it. But I give this chapter maybe an 8 probably. I don't normally attribute a number, but I'm gonna do it this time, maybe an 8 or a 7. It was really good. So let you guys think about it in the comment section. Drop a like if you like the video, subscribe if you're new, and of course I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.